It's been about 3 months since the reality war, and in that time I've had a lot of time to think about Doctor Who, but not so much about the content of Doctor Who itself, but rather my place as a Doctor Who fan and as a member of the Doctor Who community, and the way that I engage with Doctor Who as a franchise and as a piece of media, and I kind of just wanted to talk about that. So if you'll indulge me, this isn't going to be a normal type of video, but I hope that you get something out of it. And if you care about me and you care about my kind of feelings on Doctor Who, then maybe you'll get something out of it. I don't know. This was kind of inspired by DW Fan 91's recent video talking about how he kind of crashed out, but also talking a bit about the Daleks in colour and the War Games in colour, which I encourage you to go and check out. In fact, just go and subscribe to DW Fan 91. I can't recommend him highly enough. But Doctor Who has been a foundational part of my life. The reason that this YouTube channel exists is because I was 14 years old, my parents had just got divorced, I had no idea what to do with life, I felt very socially isolated, very alone, and there was this TV show that I had all these opinions about that I just couldn't share to anyone. And I thought, well, I might as well share them to people online. And that is what this channel was born out of. And ever since then, you know, this show has been such a core part of my life. My friendships have come from this show. My surroundings are full of Doctor Who stuff. I actually made it onto the show. And my career, if you can call it that, my job, essentially, is inextricably tied to Doctor Who. It's safe to say that I wouldn't have the platform I have now without this show. Straight up, I just wouldn't. And I'm forever grateful to it for that. But I've kind of been reevaluating my relationship with Doctor Who in the sense of, am I here because I love Doctor Who and I love this show? Or am I just here out of habit? Am I just here because Doctor Who is this comfort blanket for myself emotionally and as a person, and that I can't let go of it, or that I can't envision life without it? Because the thing is, something you've got to understand about me is that whenever people said, oh, Doctor Who needs a rest, Doctor Who needs a break, I have always resisted that pretty strongly. And the reason is, not because I think Doctor Who is always amazing and always great and every episode is the best thing ever made, but simply because I can't imagine something worse than Doctor Who being cancelled or going on hiatus for an extended period, whatever you want to call it. And I think that's because of how much Doctor Who has been a part of my life. The idea of it going away was scary to me. The idea of this thing not being there, you know, it's like a comfort thing. It's like a part of the furniture, you know. This TV show has been on for so long and has been a part of my life for so long that the idea of it not being on just feels odd. Even during the Chibnall era, which, as most people will know, was not, you know, my favourite era of the show, I still always said, you know, I don't want it to be cancelled, I want it to carry on, I want it to have more seasons, I want it to improve, whatever. And similarly now with the reality war, which I've made pretty clear my feelings on and how the ending of that episode did thoroughly deflate me, I still want more Doctor Who. And I don't think that's ever going to entirely go away completely. I love Doctor Who, I'll always be happy to see more of it. So yes, I do think I still love Doctor Who, and I'm not just here out of an attachment. However, I do think the way that I engage with Doctor Who probably should change a little bit. In the sense that I feel like I flew too close to the sun. And essentially what I mean by that is that Doctor Who has become so foundational to my life and so ever-present in my world that I think that I did feel this sense of protectiveness over it, this sense of defensiveness over it, that maybe wasn't always the healthiest, and maybe wasn't always the best thing ever. And I think that this is most often reflected through Twitter and other social medias like that. For those of you who don't know and don't use that website, which, in fairness, I don't blame you, my sort of status in the fandom among certain corners is a little bit infamous in the sense that there are some corners of the fandom who really don't like me. And I'm not putting that out there for sympathy. I'm not putting that out there as like a, oh no, woe is me, you know, people don't like me on the internet, whatever. That happens. That's normal. That's life. However, when it gets to the point when people are like censoring your name like you're a politician and stuff like that, I sort of thought, maybe I am too involved in this. Maybe I am too much of a part of the fan base for my own good, for my own health, for my own sanity as a person. And I'm not going to name any names, and I'm not going to name like any particular like accounts or individuals, but I see some Doctor Who fans who are so enraptured with it, and I do genuinely worry for people if Doctor Who doesn't come back in the long term. And I don't want my happiness as a person to be dependent on whether this one TV show that I've been following for so long comes back or not, or, you know, is on air or not, or is successful or not, or whatever. And I think part of the reason why people have been covering the developing stories of, you know, is Doctor Who coming back, is it not, is largely this feeling, right? Is that for some people, it's more than just a TV show to them. And that is true of me as well. It is a lot more than a TV show to me. It is so much of my life. But I think there's an element of that that's become too much the case, if that makes sense. And I think the moment that really kind of opened my eyes to this was fairly recently. They announced a Doctor Who podcast, the Whoniverse podcast. It's like basically a continuation of the old Doctor Who fan show. And again, I'm not naming any names with this. This isn't like a call-out video. That's not what I want to achieve with this. But I saw so many people just being like, oh, you know, this is crap and this is shit, and it's just another corporate podcast. It's just another, you know, kind of mouthpiece for them to be positive about the show. And to a certain extent, yes, that is true. But also, is it that deep? And by that I mean, ultimately, it's a podcast that exists that people can consume if they want to. It's an extra part of the show. And I saw people getting really, really mad about this show, acting like it was some kind of moral evil that it even existed at all. And I'm like, guys, every TV show has ancillary podcasts and bits of media that are going to be more positive. It's not like there aren't a ton of videos and podcasts out there where you can watch miserable people like me be negative about Doctor Who. That exists. That's out there. And kind of just seeing people get so kind of enraged by what is essentially a podcast on the internet kind of made me realise, but why do you care? Do you know what I mean? And it's not that I'm having a go at people who do care about these things. I think it's fine to care about whatever you want. But I think for me, I realised, oh, I've done that. I've gotten too invested in small parts of Doctor Who that ultimately do not matter. You know, in the past and over the years, I've covered news stories that I, you know, was really, like, probably overly invested in that ultimately don't mean that much. A good example recently was the video about canon in Doctor Who and about that Doctor Who magazine article where they basically kind of made a joke about the idea that, oh, you know, RTD2 takes place in an alternate timeline. And I kind of extrapolated that into this much bigger thing than it really was. It was ultimately just a columnist for a magazine doing a job. And a lot of people called me out on that and kind of said that this is clickbait, it doesn't really mean a lot. But it wasn't intentional clickbait on my end. Don't get me wrong, I knew that video would probably do well given its title. You know, I do know how to do that. I do know how to title things. I do know how to make a thumbnail that gets people to click on it. But I covered it because I genuinely cared. There is very rarely a time that I will cover something where I don't genuinely care about it. I can't really think of a time where that's necessarily happened. And that goes doubly for like all the videos talking about, is Doctor Who cancelled? Is it not? Is it cancelled? Is it not? And that's because I care about whether it's cancelled or not. I want Doctor Who to continue. But I think I realised that I can't just spend my life waiting to see if Doctor Who continues. And I can't just have this channel become a never-ending stream of minor updates on whether it's going to happen or not. You know, I see creators out there that are doing really creative stuff. I see creators like, obviously, as I mentioned before, DDP91, who really speaks from the heart. I see creators like Dalek Bumps, which is a whole channel dedicated to just weird Dalek lore. I see channels like DDP2012 and The Confused Adipose, who make fan films, entire fan films, based around these characters. And to speak candidly, the reason why my videos are the way they are is not just because I feel like they can get views. That is obviously an element to it. When creative work becomes your sort of job or your sort of, financial income, there is an element to that. But quite honestly, the reason why my videos are more basic than perhaps some of those other creators is because it's what I feel capable of creating. I don't have the greatest hand dexterity in the world. I don't have the greatest energy compared to a lot of other people. I get tired very quickly. So my videos, as a result, are more basic than other people's. But I think that doesn't mean that I can't experiment, that I can't branch out, that I can't explore Doctor Who in other ways. It just means that, I might not have the amazing editing that some of these creators do. I can't make these regular epic video essays like someone like Harbo Worms is able to do. But I can still be creative, and I think what I've realised is what I want this channel to be is a place for that. A place for me to be able to just talk about any random Doctor Who topic that I want to talk about. And so what if the show doesn't come back? So what if it's off air for a while? There's so much Doctor Who out there to explore. The classic series, the revived series, Big Finish, books, magazines. There's so much stuff out there. And I feel like I've painted myself into a very narrow box out of habit, and I think that is true. So what I want to try and do with this channel now is, while I will occasionally cover news, and I will occasionally cover stuff, if something big does come out, I'm not just going to be sat around waiting for news to happen, and that's when I make a video, because where's the fun in that? I recently started up a second channel called Thary's YT, where I've been talking about topics that aren't Doctor Who related. Mainly Superman, and also I've done a couple of videos on Zelda and stuff like that, and just kind of other topics. And it's been the most fun I've had on YouTube for a very long time. And I think that's because I got stuck in a rut with the way that I make videos. So all of this is to say, essentially, the way that I approach Doctor Who is going to change. I'm not going to be as invested in every single little bit of news, every single tiny interview section that I used to be, because ultimately, until something official happens with the show, there's no point. I don't want this to just become the online equivalent of a gossip column, which in some ways I think it probably already has. What I want to do is kind of use this place as a means to celebrate love of Doctor Who, whether it's on or not. So over the next couple of weeks, hopefully, you're going to be seeing more stuff from me that is more creative. I've got a couple of ideas that I've been bandying about for a while now. One of them is a video kind of pitching a complete reboot, a completely new continuity for Doctor Who, just kind of giving my kind of overall pitch if that idea was to be done. Another is I really want to explore a rematch between the Daleks and the Cybermen, and who would actually win a rematch given, the modern developments of both species. And there's so many different ideas I have, and I hope that I'm going to be able to show those. And I think I got so obsessed for so long with doing YouTube a certain way and getting a certain amount of views. But the truth is, views on Doctor Who content is just lower than it used to be. And I get it. We're in a bit of a weird dead zone for Doctor Who at the moment, and while the fandom is still humming along and existing, there is a general sense of apathy in the fandom at the moment, and I think probably some of the stuff that I've said maybe resonates with people to a certain extent. At least I hope it does. I know that George Sheard recently made a video talking about Doctor Who and the fandom and what we should do with it in the future, if the show doesn't come back long term, and that video also got me thinking. And I think my ultimate takeaway from all of this, and I appreciate that this is an incredibly rambly, disconnected, weird video that you're probably not used to me making, is that whether Doctor Who is on or not, whether it's cancelled or not, or dead, or whatever you want to call it, it's not really, is it? Even if the show doesn't come back for 5, 10 years, Doctor Who still exists. Stuff about it is still getting made. There's still stuff to say about Doctor Who. It's 60 years old. There's so many things that we can appreciate and celebrate with Doctor Who already as it is, without worrying about, will there be more? That was something that I was worried about for so long. But ultimately now I've kind of come to this place of, whether it does or whether it doesn't, Doctor Who's still around. It can still be a part of my life, with or without the show necessarily continuing. And I think that's what I want to focus on more on this channel, rather than constant will they, won't they's with Doctor Who's future, because I got tired of it. I'm not going to lie, you know. There's only so many videos you can do about Doctor Who being over or on hiatus, or Doctor Who being confirmed to stick around, before eventually it just becomes exhausting. It just becomes this treadmill, as Pete Capaldi would say, of constant stuff. And ultimately, this stuff is disposable. It doesn't mean anything. Anytime I cover a quote from Russell T Davies or a member of the BBC or whoever, it's immediately outdated with the next quote from the next person talking about Doctor Who's future. And on the cycle goes until ultimately, what do you have left at the end of it? And I worry that like all that this channel will be is just a place where content just exists for the sake of having content. News just is talked about for the sake of having talked about it. And I don't think I want to be that, you know? Like, and again, I want to make clear, news is still going to be a part of this channel, but it's not going to be the defining feature in the way that it has been for a very long time on this channel. I do have a lot of opinions about Doctor Who beyond just whatever the latest article is. Do you know what I mean? So to wrap up, I do still love Doctor Who. I do still care about Doctor Who. But the way that I've engaged with it, like, hasn't always been the best. I've been too obsessed with, you know, it continuing. I've been too obsessed with, you know, kind of microcosms and arguments in, like, smaller corners of fandom that ultimately do not matter. You know, some of the things that people argue about on places like Twitter are so ultimately, like, inconsequential and nothingy. And I feel like I've been in a place of just hearing the same arguments over and over and over again. It feels like being in Heaven Sent when Capaldi is just punching through that wall and it's just the same cycle over and over and over. You know, people just wondering, oh, is the show going to continue? Oh, why is Billy Piper the Doctor? Oh, why did Reality War end like that? Like, yeah, you know, and all of these are valid questions and valid talking points, but I kind of feel like they've been talked about to death. So all of this has been a very long-winded way of saying, whether the show comes back or not, I'm just going to have fun with what already exists. And when we get news that comes out, either confirming a future for it or not, then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But if I want to continue being a Doctor Who fan, and I do, it needs to be fun. And I think for me, with all the kind of negativity in the fandom and all the kind of uncertainty around the show's future, as Tegan Javanka said, it stopped being fun. So I'm going to start making it be fun again. Thanks for watching this. I hope that you got something out of it. If you did enjoy it, be sure to give it a like. I also want to quickly shout out kind of a sponsor to this video. I got reached out to by a couple of folks who are starting an eBay store called Customates, which is essentially like a place where you're going to be able to buy like Doctor Who merchandise and stuff like that, but also exclusive things that they're making themselves as well. This is actually, I got sent this, an early prototype. It's in the wrong scale at the moment. This is a model of the 2023 TARDIS. This is an early prototype, so obviously it won't completely look like this, and we're still trying to figure out the manufacturing of it. But this is something that we're looking to actually make, and it's been such an interesting experience watching the process of this be made and, you know, sort of figuring out the details and stuff like that. And the guy who 3D modeled this is insanely talented, and the people who are printing it are insanely talented, and obviously you're going to get versions of this that are painted and stuff like that. So that's also been a big part of my focus for a while, and that's been really fun. So I'm going to link that store in the description below. The only stuff that's on there at the moment is just sort of normal Doctor Who merchandise, but there will be exclusive stuff like this in the future, so stay tuned for that. So yeah, go check that store out. If you do, then it does directly help the channel, and there should be some stuff going up on there that is exclusive, and you're not going to be able to find anywhere else. You know, I don't normally take sponsorships and stuff like that, but in this case, it's actual Doctor Who merchandise, so I felt that it might actually be applicable. So I'll leave a link to that store in the description. But that's basically it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.